Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has reportedly been killed in a large-scale Israeli airstrike, according to statements from Israeli and U.S. leadership, a claim that, if confirmed, would mark one of the most consequential military actions in modern Middle Eastern history. The reports emerged following a coordinated wave of strikes described by Israeli officials as targeting senior Iranian military and leadership infrastructure. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there are strong indications that Khamenei was killed when Israeli forces struck what he characterized as hardened command facilities connected to Iran's top leadership. The strike, according to those statements, was part of a broader campaign aimed at degrading Iran's command and control capabilities. Former U.S. President Donald Trump publicly declared that Khamenei was dead, framing the development as a decisive outcome of joint U.S.-Israeli military operations. His announcement amplified global attention and accelerated diplomatic shockwaves across the region. However, despite these high-level assertions, Iranian state media has not independently confirmed Khamenei's death. As of the latest reporting from outlets including Reuters and Associated Press, there has been no verified confirmation from Tehran that the supreme leader has been killed. Iranian officials have either declined to comment directly on the claim or have issued statements indicating that leadership structures remain intact. That distinction is critical. In conflicts of this magnitude, early claims, particularly those originating from parties directly involved in the strikes, require independent verification. Leadership decapitation strikes are among the most sensitive and high-stakes military actions a state can undertake. Confirmation typically requires either acknowledgement from the targeted government, visual or forensic evidence, or corroboration from multiple independent intelligence sources. As of now, that level of confirmation has not publicly materialized. What is confirmed is that large-scale strikes occurred. Israeli officials have acknowledged targeting high-value Iranian military infrastructure. Reports describe significant explosions in or near Tehran and other strategic locations. Regional air defenses were reportedly activated, and airspace disruptions followed across multiple neighboring countries. The scope of the operation suggests extensive planning and intelligence preparation. If Khamenei has in fact been killed, the implications are profound. As supreme leader since 1989, he has been Iran's highest political and religious authority for more than 3 decades. Unlike Iran's president, the supreme leader holds ultimate control over the armed forces, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, state broadcasting, the judiciary, and key elements of foreign policy. The position is central to the Islamic Republic's power structure. Removing that figure, particularly through an external military strike, would represent an unprecedented escalation in the long-running shadow conflict between Israel and Iran. For years, the two states have engaged in indirect confrontation, cyber operations, proxy warfare, targeted assassinations of military figures, and strikes on weapons transfers across Syria and Lebanon. A direct strike on Iran's sitting supreme leader would cross a threshold far beyond previous actions. The atmosphere across the region has already shifted. Defense forces in Israel have reportedly moved to heightened alert. U.S. installations in the Middle East are reinforcing protective measures. Markets reacted sharply in early trading, with energy prices fluctuating amid uncertainty about potential retaliation. Yet at this moment, one central question remains unanswered. Is Ali Khamenei definitively dead? Until independent verification emerges, the story remains a high-stakes claim backed by Israeli and American officials but not confirmed by Tehran. In a region where perception can trigger rapid escalation, the difference between confirmed fact and unverified assertion carries enormous weight. What is clear is that the Middle East has entered one of its most volatile moments in decades, and the next confirmations, denials, or retaliatory moves could redefine the balance of power across the region. The reported strike that allegedly killed Ali Khamenei did not occur in isolation. According to statements from Israeli leadership and early reporting from outlets including Reuters and Associated Press, the operation was part of a broader, coordinated campaign targeting Iranian military and command infrastructure. Israeli officials described the strikes as precise, intelligence-driven attacks aimed at what they characterized as high-value leadership nodes. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the operation focused on command centers and hardened facilities believed to house senior decision-makers and military planners. While operational specifics remain limited, the language used suggests an attempt at what military doctrine calls a decapitation strike, targeting the top of a state's leadership structure in order to disrupt command, paralyze response, and alter strategic calculations. Reports indicate that multiple sites were hit nearly simultaneously. Explosions were reported in or around Tehran, alongside other strategic facilities believed to be connected to Iran's defense network. Analysts cited in early coverage suggest the scale and coordination imply weeks, if not months, of surveillance, intelligence collection, and contingency planning. If this was indeed a leadership-targeted strike, it represents a dramatic evolution in the long-running confrontation between Israel and Iran. For years, the conflict largely operated in the shadows. Israel has conducted hundreds of strikes in Syria, targeting Iranian weapons transfers and proxy forces. Iranian-linked groups have launched rockets and drones toward Israeli territory. Cyber operations have targeted infrastructure on both sides. But direct strikes on the highest echelon of Iran's ruling system mark a new threshold. From a strategic standpoint, a leadership strike aims to achieve multiple objectives at once. Disrupt centralized command and control. Signal overwhelming intelligence penetration. Deter further escalation by demonstrating capability and resolve. Potentially destabilize internal power cohesion. However, such operations also carry enormous risk. Targeting a sitting supreme leader, if confirmed, would be viewed not merely as a tactical military action, but as an attempt to alter the political architecture of the Islamic Republic. Former U.S. President Donald Trump publicly stated that Khamenei had been killed, describing the outcome as a decisive result of joint U.S.-Israeli operations. While U.S. operational involvement has not been fully detailed in public reporting, references to coordination suggest at minimum intelligence sharing or logistical alignment. Military analysts note that penetrating hardened facilities in Tehran would likely require advanced munitions capable of striking reinforced underground structures. Such operations typically involve precision-guided weapons, real-time surveillance feeds, and suppression of air defenses. Iranian air defense systems were reportedly activated during the attack, though there is no confirmed public accounting of intercept rates or defensive effectiveness. The timeline appears compressed. Within hours of the reported strike, regional governments began adjusting their military posture. Airspace alerts spread across neighboring countries. Maritime tracking services showed heightened naval movement in key waterways. Defense ministries across the Gulf issued precautionary statements. One major unknown remains. Was Khamenei physically present at the targeted site at the time of the strike? Israeli officials have implied confidence in their intelligence, but no independent confirmation has been provided. In operations of this magnitude, confirming the physical location of a head of state is extraordinarily complex and often relies on classified human and signal intelligence. If the objective was leadership elimination, success would depend not only on the strike's accuracy, but on real-time confirmation, something governments are often cautious to release publicly until verified beyond doubt. What is certain is that the operation was designed to send a strategic message. Israel is willing to escalate beyond proxy confrontation and directly strike at the core of Iranian power. Whether that message achieves deterrence or triggers broader retaliation is the question now facing the region. The next developments, Iranian confirmation, denial, or military response, will determine whether this operation remains a singular, high-impact strike or becomes the opening move in a far wider conflict. Within hours of Israeli officials claiming that Ali Khamenei had been killed, the regional security environment shifted dramatically. While Tehran has not confirmed the death of its supreme leader, Iranian officials moved quickly to signal that any large-scale strike on its leadership infrastructure would not go unanswered. According to early reporting from Reuters and Associated Press, Iranian air defenses were activated during the strike, and senior officials convened emergency security meetings. State media issued statements condemning what it described as Israeli aggression, while avoiding direct confirmation regarding Khamenei's status. That ambiguity has only intensified speculation both inside and outside the country. Iran's military doctrine emphasizes layered retaliation. In past confrontations, Tehran has responded through a mix of direct missile launches, drone deployments, cyber operations, and actions carried out by allied proxy forces across the region. Analysts immediately began assessing whether similar measures were being prepared. Israeli defense authorities reportedly raised their national alert level. Civil defense systems were activated, and military assets were repositioned in anticipation of possible missile or drone strikes. U.S. military installations across the Gulf also implemented heightened force protection measures. The risk of escalation extends beyond direct Iran-Israel exchanges. Tehran maintains strategic relationships with armed groups in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. In previous crises, those networks have been used to apply pressure without triggering full conventional war. Any mobilization of these actors would widen the geographic scope of confrontation. Energy markets reacted to the uncertainty. Oil prices showed volatility amid concerns that a broader conflict could disrupt shipping lanes or infrastructure in the Persian Gulf. Maritime security analysts began monitoring tanker routes and naval deployments in the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which a significant percentage of global oil exports pass. Inside Iran, the political atmosphere is opaque. The absence of official confirmation regarding Khamenei's status leaves the public reliant on fragmented reporting. In highly centralized political systems, messaging during moments of leadership uncertainty is tightly controlled. The longer ambiguity persists, the more destabilizing it can become. For now, Iran's response posture appears measured but tense. Officials have vowed consequences. Military assets are on alert. Regional actors are bracing. Whether Tehran chooses immediate retaliation or calibrated delay may depend on two factors: confirmation of Khamenei's fate and assessment of Israel's readiness for further escalation. At this stage, the situation remains fluid, but the potential for rapid expansion into a broader regional conflict is unmistakable. If the reports of Ali Khamenei's death are confirmed, Iran would enter one of the most consequential political transitions since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The supreme leader is not merely a symbolic authority. The position sits at the apex of Iran's political system, holding ultimate control over the armed forces, the judiciary, state broadcasting, and key levers of foreign policy. Unlike the presidency, which changes hands through elections, the supreme leader serves for life. Succession is formally overseen by the Assembly of Experts, a clerical body tasked with appointing and supervising the supreme leader. However, real-world influence extends beyond formal procedure. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, wields substantial power, both militarily and economically. Any leadership transition would likely involve careful negotiation between clerical authorities and security elites. Reporting from outlets such as The Guardian and The Washington Post has previously examined potential succession scenarios, noting that internal cohesion has been a cornerstone of regime stability. A sudden, externally triggered leadership loss could test that cohesion. There are several possible outcomes: rapid consolidation around a pre-identified successor, a temporary collective leadership structure, internal factional competition between hardline and pragmatic elements. Historically, Iran managed a controlled transition after the death of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini in 1989, when Khamenei himself rose to power. However, today's geopolitical and domestic landscape is significantly more complex. Economic pressures, public dissatisfaction, and regional tensions create a far more volatile backdrop. A power vacuum, even temporary, could influence Iran's military posture. Hardline factions might advocate aggressive retaliation to demonstrate strength. Others might prioritize stability to avoid further destabilization. If the regime consolidates quickly, it may emerge more unified. If internal divisions surface, the consequences could extend beyond foreign policy into domestic governance. For now, without confirmation of Khamenei's death, the succession question remains hypothetical. But contingency planning both inside Iran and among foreign governments is almost certainly underway. The international implications of the reported strike reach far beyond Tehran and Jerusalem. The United States has expressed support for Israel's security posture, though details of operational involvement remain limited in public reporting. European governments have called for restraint while seeking clarification on the facts. Diplomatic channels are reportedly active across multiple capitals. Russia and China, both of which maintain strategic relationships with Iran, face a complex calculation. Condemnation of Israeli action is possible, but direct involvement would significantly escalate tensions with the West. How Moscow and Beijing respond diplomatically could shape the broader geopolitical landscape. Global markets reacted quickly. Oil price volatility reflects concerns over potential supply disruptions. Defense stocks in multiple countries saw movement amid uncertainty. international airlines began adjusting routes in response to airspace risk assessments. The United Nations has urged de-escalation, emphasizing the danger of a broader regional war. The Middle East remains a network of overlapping alliances, rivalries, and unresolved conflicts. A direct strike on Iran's top leadership, if confirmed, would alter deterrence calculations across that network. At its core, the strategic question is this: was this operation intended as deterrence, retaliation, or an attempt to reshape the regional balance of power? If Israel's objective was to neutralize a perceived existential threat, the outcome will depend on Iran's next move. If the strike was meant to deter further aggression, escalation could undermine that goal. And if the removal of Khamenei triggers internal instability, the ripple effects could extend well beyond Iran's borders. What began as a targeted military operation now stands at the center of a rapidly evolving geopolitical crisis. Confirmation, retaliation, diplomacy, or miscalculation, each path carries profound consequences. The coming hours and days will determine whether this moment becomes a contained but historic strike or the opening chapter of a far wider conflict in the Middle East.